Inflation hits 7% year over year as we start to see more and more bare shelves coming into the new year. So we'll talk just a bit about more finance after we're done talking about finance for the morning. Joe Biden's speech is so offensive to people, even Dick Durbin is saying that he needs to go back and tone that down some. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Tom Cotton trolls Chuck Schumer on defending the filibuster by reading a speech that's entirely made up of Chuck Schumer quotes, so we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. And joining many progressive cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, are set to require proof of vaccination and ID for entering bars, eateries, theaters. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a fairly packed show to go over here once again, but, it's day 4 in quarantine. Thank you, Omicron. So, I can't go to work, so I guess we're going to get through everything here today. And do remember, the Daily Ignoramus is back in the morning again today. Stephen is done. Well, I think he's done with studio for the week here, so he'll be back doing his regular time once again. I watched the show last night. That was pretty cool, so definitely go and hang out with him. I may not be active in the chat, but I will be listening there, so guys, come back and hang out with me over there and call me out, see if you want to see anything off of this. I'm a little bit behind today. I'm a little bit later than I wanted to be because I almost fell back asleep this morning, which is good because I think that means my body's going to be healing at some point here. And I haven't been sleeping real well throughout this entire quarantine thing, so the fact that my body willingly wanted to go to sleep after being wide awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, that feels really good. But the news stops for nobody, and we need to be here as well. And then I got up at like 7 rather. And while I was organizing tabs, I sat down and listened to Biden's whole speech. And it is as bad as they're saying it is. It is. If you haven't listened to the whole speech that he gave in front of Morehouse and Clark, you need to listen to it. It's bad. It is bad. I couldn't even imagine how bad it was. I just listened to the whole thing. Like, legitimately, as I was hearing, God bless you and God bless America, I was hitting the live button ready to go. That's how short ago it was that I listened to it. And it is bad. There's nothing of substance here. There's no uniting of this, and it is us versus them. And look how bad these evil people are. We need to do everything we can to separate them from our society and make sure their voices are never heard again. It is bad. It is very bad, but we'll get into it. We'll talk about this over here on Contemporary. I got that queued up for the second act of what we're doing here today. We'll do finance first and then inflation as well. And then, we'll go and move into talking about this speech and the people that disagreed with it. But before we get started, because we got to get into it, get my tabs up here, right? Go check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Turnsofpagesproductions.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, carrying great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, aforementioned, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, the new upcoming project with Britt and Sean Hickman. Go check them both out. And also, The Porch Boys. Go check all of them out as well. It's a great time. They're great friends of Liberty. We'll have written articles. We will have news stories. We will have culture. We will have everything we can to put together to come back and help you guys out and help make sure that you guys can get your news by the people for the people instead of getting your news from people who live in or who wear suits that cost more than your house while they deliver you the news. It's always been my dream to get news by the people for the people. So we want to help out do that. So come back out and hang out with us. bookmark the webpage, fundraiser coming soon, and go and check that out. All right, looking in at the Dow is sitting at 36,290.32. That did a slight upturn at the end of the day, and it was kind of steady throughout the day too. It jumped up, it dropped back down below, and then it just kind of jump roped with the line of the previous close throughout the day, ending itself 0.11% up. That's 38.3 points up throughout the day yesterday. So we'll go over a little bit of what happened there between IBD and Seeking Alpha. On the Bitcoin that was last night's number. Let's get a refresh on that. The Bitcoin is up to 43,901.50. That was a slight drop over 24 hours ago. 0.05% down, so $20.30 down. So it's holding steady once again here. We could see the Bitcoin coming back throughout the year here. So we'll watch and see where that goes and what happens with that. I hope the Shibu comes back. That's the one I'm hoping for to come back. Looking in at your scrap metal prices. Copper is up, steel is down, aluminum is up on the average. Looking at your individual plays, it looks like all your copper plays are up currently. Everything that's got copper in it is up, including brass and brass shells. Steel is more mixed, with conduit steel is up. Stainless steel is up, but looks like everything else on the steel play is down right now. On aluminum, that's also mixed, with siding up, aluminum copper fin up, radiators down, cans are up, sheet aluminum down, rims are up, and some other individual plays. Motors are up, ballasts are down, lead is down, and batteries as well. The catalytic converter market continues to be mixed, with small Ford, large Ford, and large GM cats all up, but regular domestic and small GM cats both down. Compressors, alternators, carbide are all up. All of your PCs are up. Hard drives, motherboards, power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC towers. So just what you have coming off of here. And watch for the markets to reflect what the prices are and the demand is for these objects that are getting traded in at this point. And we'll see what's going on with that. Looking in at IBD for the day. Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones Futures rise after market rally pause. Tech Bellwether signals earnings breakout. From Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures tilted higher early Thursday, along with S&P 500 Futures and NASDAQ Futures. The stock market rally advanced on Wednesday, extending a rebound, but with the major indices closing well off session highs. Apple chipmaker Taiwan Semiconductor is signaling a breakout on strong earnings before Thursday's open, also giving Applied Materials stock a boost. KB Home and Delta Airlines also climbed on quarterly results. Consumer inflation came in slightly hotter than expected on Wednesday, hitting a fresh 39-year high of 7%, but investors appeared relieved that December inflation report wasn't even worse. Are you fucking kidding? How much worse do you want it to be? 7% is officially the worst in my lifetime. Because the last time we saw inflation this high year over year was 1982. I didn't come along until 1984. So yes, this is officially the worst inflation of my lifetime. And you want it fucking worse? Are you serious? Speaking of people born in 1984. Meanwhile, crude oil and copper prices continue to rally, with energy, mining, and other commodity-related stocks rallying. Still, the major indices backed off morning highs, with the NASDAQ hitting resistance after rebounding since Monday afternoon. Applied Materials rebounded bullishly from its 50-day line, while Mosaic broke out past a buy point. Tesla was among Wednesday's big movers, reclaiming key support, but is not yet actionable. KB Home reported earnings after the close, while Taiwan Semiconductor and Delta Airlines reported early Thursday, kicking off quarterly results for their respective sectors. KB Home earnings beat views. Sales came in a little light, but the home builder gave bullish guidance on the revenue, selling prices, and profit margins. KBH stock, which was the laggard when rivals were breaking out, rose solidly overnight, signaling moves about the 50-day and 200-day lines. Taiwan Semiconductor earnings topped estimates, with the chip foundry also guiding up for Q1 revenue. TSM stock rose 4.4% to 138.01, signaling a breakout from the 11-month cup with handle base, with a 135.65 point. As a chip contractor, Taiwan Semiconductor makes chips for Apple, Nvidia, and many other fabless chip makers. Meanwhile, TSM also gave a bullish 2022 capital spending forecast. That's good news for chip equipment makers such as Applied Materials. Apple edged lower in pre-market trade, but still actionable from its 10-week line. Nvidia rose a fraction, still below its 50-day line after last week's sell-off. Delta earnings and revenue slightly top views. The carrier expects a Q1 loss as the Irma-Gerd variant spurs major flight cancellations, but it's stuck to forecasts for a 2022 profit. Delta Airlines stock rose modestly before the open. Shares have been rallying over the past several weeks, but are well off 2021 highs along with other airline stocks. But Delta earnings are important not only for other airlines, but for hotels and online travel sites that are performing better. Tesla and Nvidia are on the IBD leaderboard. Applied Materials, and MOS stock are on Swing Trader. AMAT is on the IBD 50 list. Mosaic was Wednesday's IBD stock of the day. Let's look at the futures. Dow futures rose 0.1% versus fair value as Boeing rallied on a report that China could allow 737 MAX flights to resume this month. S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ 100 futures climbed less than 0.1%. The 10-year Treasury yield rose slightly to 1.74% after pulling back in the two prior sessions. Crude oil prices edged lower while natural gas prices fell solidly after recent big gains. Yeah, I'm really dreading opening up the heating bill coming up for January. Not looking forward to that, guys. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that's what we see coming up off of that. Let's grab a couple bullet points from Seeking Alpha, and let's get into the news of the day. From Seeking Alpha, NASDAQ, S&P, and Dow Jones futures drift ahead of wholesale inflation data. From Kim Khan, bullet points ahead. Stock futures, index futures point to little change at the open, but there will be the December PPI arriving to help that direction. The producer price index, so we'll see how much more the businesses are losing, how much more their costs went up versus how much our costs went up. NASDAQ and S&P are flat and Dow are up a little. The headline PPI for December is expected to tick up to an annual rate of 9.8%. Holy shit! The cost of your materials is going up the raw materials to make the stuff that you want to go and buy is going up 9.8%. With the core PPI rising to 8%. Today's U.S. producer price inflation ultimately matters more to markets, UBS chief economist Paul Donovan says. First, most companies sell to other companies, so this drives revenue growth. Second, producer prices signal corporate pricing power and thus inflation pressures. Corporate pricing power, measured by the monthly change in core producer prices, peaked in the second quarter of 2021 and should continue to decline. The 10-year Treasury yield is up 3 basis points to 1.75%. Yesterday's tame overall move in Treasuries masked a divergence between the sharp bounce back in the 10-year yield and a decline in inflation break-evens as the worst fears from the report weren't realized. Deutsche Bank's Jim Reed writes, also on the economic calendar, weekly jobless claims arrive before the bell. Yeah, we're not talking about that, are we? And Lael Brainerd will appear before the Senate Banking Committee for her Fed Vice Chair nomination hearing. So that's what we're seeing coming in on finance. And before we get into more finance here, I wanted to touch on something just to carry over something that I was talking about yesterday at the beginning of the show, and that is, of course, Ray Epps. Jesse Kelly is quote tweeting out to Kyle Cheney, and we'll look into what Kyle Cheney had to say in just a second here. But Jesse Kelly points out, how many people dressed like this have you seen the media speak up for? One. There's been one. I wonder why that is. And I do have some concerns about this. And like I said yesterday, I don't think that Epps worked alone. I just think he was either the one who was stupid enough to get caught on camera doing what he was doing, or, and this is the other side of this that goes along with that, You have to remember in this situation that everybody who was involved, when they came and when they were arrested for all of this, the FBI came and they took all their electronic devices, their computers, all their phones, their tablets, everything that they owned was taken from them. Everything that they had, everything they owned, everything that they had that had any data on it whatsoever. So any video that you're seeing from that day is either somebody who got really, really lucky with the cloud and was able to hide something, or what the FBI wants you to see. Keep that in mind as you're looking into this. But to go back off of this, I mean, yeah, there's only been one person that's dressed like that they're defending. As much as they're trying to tell you, oh no, he wasn't a Fed, he told us in an interview. By the way, an interview that can't be FOIA'd. But going on to what Kyle Cheney had to say, because of course Cheney is going to try to disrupt this too. There were many reasons the Ray Epps story was far-fetched even before the committee revealed his testimony yesterday. Chief among them is the false idea that he was the only one screaming about going to the Capitol before the riot. He was not. I know he wasn't. Everybody fucking knows that he wasn't. Everybody and their brother knows that he wasn't the only one screaming about it. But he was the one that got caught on tape. And then this one goes off and takes it even further into the woods. Proud Boys bragged in messages about having riled up the normies before the breach. One yelled, let's take the fucking Capitol. Dude, the Proud Boys have been glowing forever. You ever notice, during the St. George riots last year, did you ever notice that within probably about 20 minutes of some incident happening in some city across the country, Antifa was there somehow? And within 13 minutes of Antifa showing up, the Proud Boys were there too? And have you ever seen a Proud Boy anywhere other than a place where Antifa was? But yeah. Ray Epps was the one who got caught. So I wanted to just touch on that just a little bit. And then point out, yeah, like what Jesse Kelly said. Anybody else who has this hat on that day, the mainstream media is telling you all their secrets, all the bad shit they've done, all the horrible stuff that happened with them. Not just the ones who went into the Capitol, but everybody who was seen outside. How terrible these people were, how they beat their wives, how they did this, how they did that, the parking ticket they got in 1987. Except for this guy. He's the only one the media is defending right now. But that's what we see off that. Alright, let's talk inflation. From the New York Post. Inflation hits 4-decade high. Consumer prices soar 7%. From Thomas Barabi. Inflation has soared to its highest in 4 decades, with consumer prices jumping 7% for the year, ending in December, the Feds said on Wednesday. The surge was the highest annual increase since June of 1982 for the Consumer Price Index, a key inflation gauge that tracks the cost of goods and services, including used car sales, groceries, and rent, according to the data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics on a monthly basis. Consumer prices rose 0.5% in December. Increases in the indices for shelter and used cars and trucks were the largest contributors to the seasonally adjusted all items increase, the BLS said in a release. Inflation has exceeded 6% for 3 consecutive months. This is fine. Everything is fine. This is fine. Excluding food and gas, the index rose 0.6% in December and 5.5% over the last 12 months. Food prices rose 0.5% for the month and 6.3% year over year. The energy index declined 0.4% but rose more than 29% over the last year. Jeez. Shelter costs rose 0.4% in December and 4.1% over 12 months. Used vehicle prices surged 3.5% for the month and are up more than 37% year over year. Inflation has surged in recent months as the reopening of the U.S. economy struggles to meet rising demand during the pinko-fucking-pox pandemic. Supply chain bottlenecks, shortages of key products, and tight labor market have contributed to higher costs for consumers. The highly contagious Irma-Gerd variant is driving a record surge in infections, which could exacerbate economic gridlock for the weeks to come. President Brandon downplayed the decade's-high surge, arguing in a statement that the latest consumer price index data showed his administration is making progress. It's slowing the rate of price increases. The president noted gas and food prices declined for the month. No, they didn't. At the same time, this report underscores we still have more work to do. I'm sick of standing by and being quiet about this, with price increases still too high and squeezing family budgets, Biden added. I know that's not what he said in that particular speech, but that's me making fun of the speech that he did in Moorhead and Clark. He hit the podium. While the cost of gas has declined since a peak of $3.42 per gallon in November, some analysts warn it could exceed $4 in the worst-case scenario for the months ahead. Nearly half of the U.S. households said price increases have resulted in some degree of financial hardship, according to the Gallup poll published last month. I did that! Look at me! I did that! That was all me! The increase in costs for goods and services have effectively erased wage gains despite favorable hiring conditions for American workers. Employers posted 10.6 million job openings in November, and the unemployment rate is currently 3.9%, close to what the Federal Reserve considers full employment. Let's do the U6 now. In a separate release, the BLS said real average hourly earnings for all U.S. employees were down 2.4% in December compared to the same month 1 year earlier. This is fine. Everything is fine. Prices are subject to change due to inflation. The latest inflation numbers drew critical responses from GOP lawmakers who argue that Brandon administration's policies have made the problems worse. This crushing report shows Democrats' spending has pushed Bidenflation to reach the highest prices in 40 years, killing family budgets and wiping out 3 years of wage gains. Representative Kevin Brady, ranking GOP member of the House Ways and Means Committee, says, "No one is buying Democrats' excuses. The American people are suffering as they watch this administration refuse to lift a finger to help them out of a crisis," Brady said. There you go. Cars under $5,000, cash, 3 months warranty. There you go. So there you see, 7% inflation. This is fine. This is totally fine. Let's look in it here from NBC. Consumer prices rose by 7% in December over previous year, marking the third straight month of high inflation. A lot of this is going to be the same information, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. From Ben Popkin, consumer prices rose by 7% in December over the previous year, its fastest increase since the early 80s as companies raised prices to offset pandemic-driven supply chain issues, and also took the opportunity to increase profit margins on the back of brisk consumer spending. Oh, fuck you. That is rich coming from you guys. Oh, the consumer prices rose 7% because companies are using they're using the crisis to pad their pockets. Fuck you. You have to come back, and you're billionaires too. That's the thing of this. That's what pisses me really off about this. You have billionaire NBC coming out and saying, well, the problem is the billionaires just trying to pad their pockets. It's the evil billionaires. Go back to your socialist university and have your professor tell you how evil they are. Fuck you. The latest Consumer Price Index data released Wednesday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics marks the third consecutive month in which the index, a measure of what consumers pay for goods and services, rose by more than 6%. Today's report, which shows a meaningful reduction in headline inflation over the last month, with gas prices and food prices falling, demonstrates that we're making progress in slowing the rate of price increases. Biden said in a statement released Wednesday morning. At the same time, this report underscores that we still have more work to do. Yeah, we heard this. The core index, which excludes more volatile food and energy, also rose by 5.5%. Supply has not kept up with this rise in demand, and prices of goods have surged, Moody's Investor Services said in a report. Supply disruptions, especially for semiconductors, have also contributed to shortages of high-ticket items such as new and used cars, and pushed up prices. In mid-December, the Federal Reserve announced it would likely raise interest rates 3 times in 2022, though it kept its benchmark rate near zero. I want to go back on the new and used cars thing for just a second, because I've talked about this before. The Ford dealer over in Delavan keeps sending me letters because they want to go back and buy my truck, because they need inventory. I'm sure the Ford dealer in Janesville needs inventory too, but they know better than to contact me because they sold me a lemon. They know better. But the Ford dealer in Delavan keeps trying to get me to sell my truck to them. And they have come up to $20,000 already, which is considerably more than I paid for the truck when I bought it. Which sounds like a really good deal. Hey, you'll pay off the loan, and I'll get a few grand for free on top of everything else. That'll be pretty cool, right? But in order to improve on anything, to get anything improved, I mean, even to go back and get, mine's a 14, to get a 15 if I really wanted a 15, and I don't like that body style, so that's not in the cards anyway. But even to go out and get a 15 off of their lot with extended cab, and let's say 98,000 miles on it. Let's use that as a round number. So just below 100,000, just like the white truck was when I bought that. I'm going to be walking out of there for $34,000. There's no value in that for me. None whatsoever. High inflation is a severe threat, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said Tuesday during a Senate hearing for his second term at the head of the central bank. However, he was optimistic that supply chain issues would ease this year and help reduce inflation. 2/3 of publicly traded companies are reporting greater profit margins now than they did before the pandemic, Senator Elizabeth Warren said during the hearing. Does that increase in profit margins, combined with greater market concentration in industry after industry, suggest to you that some corporations may be passing along increased costs, at the same time charging more on top of that to fatten their profit margins? Well, see, when your friends in Boston, in Albany, in Sacramento, in Springfield, when your friends in these states, Burlington, and these capitals I should say, what's another one? Lansing. They tried to do it here, and the legislature told them to fuck themselves. See, when your friends in these areas, Richmond, there's another one. When your friends in these states came by Elizabeth Warren and told all the people who are competing, the mom and pop stores, that they could only be open limited hours, if they could even be open at all, because, it's too dangerous to have people coming out and just shopping for pleasure. Instead, they have to go to the big box store, to the Walmart, to the Target. Your friends in these state capitals went back and got all the competition so nicely out of the way for these big business people that you think that you're going to rail against right now. But this is the narrative that they're going to come back and try to fucking peddle. That's why I got so pissed off about this at the beginning. But that's what we see off of that. From the New York Post. Biden says he's making progress on still rising inflation. From Stephen Nelson. We've covered a little bit of this in the last two articles too. President Brandon on Wednesday insisted that he was making progress on inflation, despite data showing it continued to grow last month for an annual jump of 7%, the highest increase since 1982. The White House highlighted falling fuel costs in December and a lower overall monthly increase of 0.5% for common goods and services versus 0.8% the prior month, even though the cumulative annual increase grew from 6.8%. Today's headline, which shows a meaningful reduction in headline inflation over last month, with gas prices and food falling, demonstrates that we're making progress in slowing the rate of price increases, Biden said in a statement. Although Biden claimed the food prices were falling, the new Consumer Price Index data indicate food prices actually increased by 0.5% in November to December, up a total of 6.3% over 12 months. The monthly rate of increase slowed from 0.7% in November. Energy costs did fall 0.4% in December, but, you're running out of strategic oil reserves there, Mr. Brandon. According to new data, driven by falling gasoline and natural gas prices, but energy costs remain 29.3% higher than last year, according to the new data. At the same time, this report underscores, and we still have more work to do, with price increases still too high and squeezing family budgets. I got a crick in my neck that's killing me here, guys. Sorry, I keep trying to get it to crack on my camera. Inflation is a global challenge, appearing in virtually every developed nation as it emerges from the pandemic economic slump. America is fortunate that we have one of the fastest growing economies, thanks in part to the American Rescue Plan. I did that. Sounds just like Obama, doesn't he? Which enables us to address price increases and maintain strong, sustainable economic growth. Really? 7%? You think that's sustainable? 7% inflation versus 2.5% economic growth. You think that's sustainable? No, and I don't usually do live chat during the morning show, but I do have to say this. See, Trump, he would have been running up to credit, but he would have tried to feign that it wasn't all him by replacing the me with us. But still, yes, saying the same thing. It was all us, Americans. We did this together. Okay, I was the one that signed the bill, but we did this together. Love me for signing the bill, but we did this. It was us, okay? Biden administration officials last year called high inflation transitory. Yeah, that went out the window pretty fucking quick. And attributed to the pinko-pox supply chain bottlenecks rather than generous social spending initiatives. Biden's White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain on Wednesday retweeted a post noting that the monthly rate of inflation has actually trended down the last 2 months, even though the annual rate of cost increase hit cumulative new highs. High inflation is a major political liability for Biden and has contributed to his slump in recent polls, with an average disapproval rating of 53% and an approval of just 42.8%. According to Real Clear Politics, I think that just ticked down over the last 24 hours too. I think the aggregate has still got him above 40, but I think it's like closer to 41 now. Let's see. Let's actually look at that. Polls. Yep, I was right. So this is the RCP aggregate right now, and yeah, he's a little bit above what I said. He's from 1217 to 111 now to 41.9 approved, 51 or 53.1 disapprove on the aggregate. This latest Quinnipiac really hurt. Down to 35 approved, 54 disapprove. That really hurt the approved number. And Quinnipiac is typically pretty friendly to Democrats. Senator Manchin all but killed Biden's $2.2 trillion Build Back Bullshit Act last month, saying that he was concerned about high inflation and that budget gimmicks lowered the true cost of the package, as costs were spread over fewer years than revenue streams. So yes, he is coming back out here and trying to... I mean, they're trying to spin this however they can, and it's just not working out for him. And the supply chain issues. Empty grocery store shelves could take months to get restocked. From Tisha Lewis. This is over at Fox 5, Washington, D.C. Grocery store shelves are empty yet again, and it could reportedly be months before they're restocked. Industry insiders say the supply chain struggle is not a quick fix thanks to labor shortages and inflation. Some grocery stores reportedly turning off-brands to keep up with stocks. Fox 5 is told hard-to-get items include beef, pork, eggs, and maple syrup. Good. So, the other night I used Instacart for the first time. Because I'm on the Pinko Pox quarantine. Which that's actually a handy little device. I don't know that I would want to use that all the time, but that's a handy little service for... Like, if you do, for whatever reason, you can't get out of the house for, like I say, I'm on quarantine until Wednesday, so... If for any reason whatsoever you can't get out of the house, that's a handy little app to have, the Instacart one. But I noticed, and I thought that this was just because of the holiday first. I thought, okay, well, they sold down on a bunch of stuff because the holiday came through and, everybody went out and bought everything, and then everybody was off for the holidays because they could demand being off for the holidays, this, that, and the next thing, and nothing could get there. Like, when I first got back from Georgia, I went over to get some stuff, and, like, the cheap beef that I get if I want to make burgers or something, that was completely wiped out, and a lot of the store shelves were empty. I'm like, okay, well, we'll give it a couple days, and it'll come back and recover. But on the Instacart thing, now they did get me everything that I did want that day for everything. But like 4 things on the list, they told me, we're running real low on this stuff, and just in case our shopper can't get there in time before somebody else goes and grabs that, why don't you click yes or no in case you want this replacement, this replacement, this replacement, and this replacement. Well, the weird one is one of them was ramen noodles. I wanted to grab some creamy chicken ramen noodles because I love that flavor. And they tried to get me to take roast chicken. I'm like, roast chicken is gross. There's a reason you have so much stock of that flavor. That one's gross. The creamy is where it's at. So even not being there, I'm seeing where Instacart is saying, hey, just be careful, right? Because you might not get what you want here. But yes, I would rather go to the store than do Instacart myself. Let's see. This comes as the Ermagerd variant and coronavirus cases continue to rise, fueling a workforce shortage, including shortage of truckers, warehouse workers, and meat cutters. Shoppers took out their frustration on Twitter by sharing photos of their local grocery stores and tagging Bare Shelves Biden, which began trending according to Fox News. And I don't know that I would do it just because I remember the internal politics of working in a grocery store, and I don't think that I could put myself through that again, unless I was like desperate and starving. But with the shortage on butchers, I wonder if I would make more being like an actual in-store butcher in a grocery store than I'm making now. And I know how to do it. been around, but I've been learning how to do this my whole life. I know how to do it. I know how to do the custom trims and everything else like that. I know what's safe and what isn't. I've got experience with it, but I do have to wonder if I would make more there than I'm making now. But then also have to deal with all the drama of working around high school kids. Excuse me, Mr. J. Edgar. You have to settle something for us. If you were young enough, would you think that Valerie is hot? Or would you think that Jenna is hot? I'm like, kids, leave me alone. Get off my lawn. The Irma Gerd variant has been also reportedly reigniting supply chain struggles. Some grocery stores are opting to let shelves go empty, while others are exploring less popular brands, hoping to give customers other options. So that's what we see coming up off of that. Let's grab one from NBC News. Here's why store shelves are empty again in parts of the US. I have not pre-read this, so I'm kind of curious, and NPR is going to do the same thing. Because I know NBC is going to do it, and NPR is going to do it. I want to see how they try to run cover for this. This is from Phil McCausland. Yeah, I've seen a shelf that looks like this before, recently. The recent spread of the Irma Gerd variant among supply chain workers, sour weather, and even a recall of bagged salads and vegetables have caused Americans to once again find barren shelves at supermarkets or retail stores. While industry leaders hope this latest supply chain follow-up will be a short-term frustration, it comes amid the ongoing challenges they faced during the pandemic: shipping delays, congestion at ports, labor shortages, and more. Doug Baker, Vice President of Industry Relations for the Food Marketing Institute, a trade group, said the latest pinko pox variant and the bad stretch of winter weather have made the supply chain situation worse. In what? Just one area? Because the bad stretch of winter weather, at least for me, ended halfway through Illinois. In December, at least. I don't know what it's like now. I hear it's like 30 in Atlanta. Doug Baker, Vice President of Industry Relations for the Food Marketing Institute Group, said, I did this one already. He said he remained hopeful that things would normalize again once the country got through the Irma Gerd surge. Supply chain constraints and shelf conditions will continue to have their ebbs and flows, but maybe by the back half of 2022, we'll start seeing some normalizing of supply chains, he said. You'll have to put an asterisk on that because we can get another variant and another spike in cases, and we're starting to see really abnormal weather patterns. Rain and tornadoes in the spring, followed by an active hurricane season, could have a heavy effect on the country's supply chain, Baker noted, and the industry is still contending how best to make itself attractive to workers. The number of people who voluntarily quit their jobs surged to 4.5 million in November. The U.S. Department of Labor's monthly job openings and labor turnover survey said last week, indicating Americans are increasingly confident they can find better opportunities in the labor market. But, see, they're not. That's the thing. Now, if all these retail workers really wanted to go stick it out to the man and do something good for the supply chain, and do something good for their Lord and Savior, President Biden, they would all do their great resignation from their coffee shop jobs or this and that and the next thing, and all go out to the DMV and get a CDL, which that thought in and of itself, a bunch of later millennials and Gen Z getting CDLs, but they would all run out and get a CDL and fix the supply chain issue. That sounds like hard work, though. These jobs remain unfilled, and the Irma Gerd variant is able to find a foothold among the largely vaccinated meatpacking workforce. The labor shortages are further exacerbated, said Mark Lauritsen, International Vice President for Meatpacking at the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union. So they're saying weather and Ermagerd. Which the Ermagerd, yeah, that I can see. And our friends over at NPR also have something to say about this here, so let's have a listen to what they have to say. Grocery store shortages are back. Here are some of the reasons why. This is from Joe Hernandez, and remember, NPR, they need your money. They get taxpayer subsidies. But that's not enough, so you need to donate to them, because it is public. And while they won't let you, who doesn't agree with them, transmit on their networks, it's still, as they say, public. It's private in the sense of who they'll put on there, but it's public in the sense of they need our money, comrade. So make sure you donate. Hit that red button, and they can spread their communist ideals around the country. NPR, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. No, you're not imagining it. Some grocery store shelves are bare again, conjuring bad memories of spring 2020 for many. Social media is ripe with images of empty supermarket aisles and signs explaining the lack of available food and other items. Stores such as Aldi have apologized to customers for the shortages. The reasons for the dwindling stock are numerous, according to food industry analysts, and include some issues that impacted retailers at the beginning of the pandemic, as well as challenges that have cropped up more recently. We're really seeing the perfect storm, said Phil Lempert, editor of the website supermarketguru.com, told NPR. Lempert said the Northeast is facing some of the worst shortages now, due in part to recent winter storms that snarl transportation routes, but that could change with the weather. It's weird because, I don't know, maybe we're just more prepared in Wisconsin, but when I work in both ends of the supply chain, whether it be on the fleet that sent the beef out, or on the receiving end, in the grocery store that brought the stuff in, the drivers were told either way that you don't roll, well, we'll do everything to keep you safe while you're rolling, but you don't roll, don't come back to work the next day. But like I said, maybe it's different in the Northeast. But Nate Rose, the communications director for California Grocers Association, said any comparison to March 2020 is not quite right. There are some issues with out of stock, but it tends to be a situation where if you go to a store on a Tuesday night, maybe something's out of stock, but by Wednesday something's back in stock, Rose told NPR. I'll give them that. That I'll give them. They are getting stuff back in stock, it's just slow as shit. Everyone's become really reliant on kind of just that just-in-time supply chain, he added. And I think what we're seeing is that things are a little behind right now. Some conservatives have begun using the hashtag #BareShelvesBiden to blame the current admin for the shortages, even though grocery stores experienced serious supply problems under President Trump, too. Right, and NPR said that this was Trump's America when we saw the bare shelves under Trump. I remember that. We were doing contemporary at the time. Here are some of the reasons the current supply shortages at your local supermarket. Number 1, the Ermagerd variant. 2, labor shortages. So if you replace this with Alpha variant and this, well, keep that as labor shortages, these were both things that NPR squarely placed on President Trump's shoulders in June of 2020. Trucking and shipping. Truckers are also in short supply. Here's some dispute about how bad the situation really is. Trucking companies are offering higher wages to attract workers, but employment levels still aren't high enough to meet the demand for ground transport. It's because the job sucks. I'm not going to lie, and I've done it. You're alone with your thoughts for 14 hours a day. You're just sitting there. You don't see your family a lot of the time, especially if you're over the road. And then they keep making it harder and harder to get a CDL. In December, the White House announced a plan to bolster the trucking industry, including to make it easier for drivers to get commercial driver's licenses or CDLs, which is probably the one intelligent idea they've had, is to make that easier. Especially as much as these trucks drive themselves these days. It's not like 1998, where you looked at the shifter, and you saw all these numbers on there going from 1 all the way over to 18, and you're like, what the hell do I do? I mean, for the most part now, it's a little dial on a little stick on the side of the steering wheel, and you just put it into drive, and that's it. Severe weather and climate change. Climate change isn't a new problem, but it's the one that's still vexing the food industry. Severe weather events are becoming more frequent and intense across the world as the planet warms. So yes, everything but the Brandon administration. Which there's some merit to what they said. It's just the fact that, in 2020, 2 of these 3 things were Trump's fault. Let's grab one from the New York Post. Shifting gears, let's talk about the Brandon speech for a bit. McConnell rips Biden's voting rights speech as profoundly unpresidential. Oh, that's why I have 2 hills right in a row. Because I moved this because I wanted to talk about McConnell before I talked about Durbin. So, Joe Biden, and like I said at the top of the show, I listened to this speech right before I went live. And Joe Biden gave a speech so bad that even Dick Durbin said, dude, you gotta back off on this. But we'll talk about McConnell first. This is from Kelly Patterson. Senate Minority Leader Turtleman McConnell ripped into President Biden's Georgia speech on the Democratic push for voting rights legislation, calling it profoundly unpresidential. In a scathing address on the Senate floor, the Kentucky Republican accused Biden of calling millions of Americans domestic enemies, which he did in that speech, by the way, while comparing a bipartisan majority of senators to literal traitors, which he did, literally. How profoundly unpresidential, McConnell said. Look, I've known, liked, and personally respected Joe Biden for many years. I did not recognize the man at that podium yesterday. Did you check the earlobes by any chance? McConnell says that Biden's speech was a rant, incoherent, incorrect, beneath his office, and unbecoming of a president of the United States. He pointed to Biden's inaugural address last January, in which a newly sworn-in president said, Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. That was just 12 months ago, but yesterday he poured a giant can of gasoline on the fire, the senator said, later adding that Biden said, anyone who opposes smashing the Senate and letting Democrats rewrite election law is a domestic enemy and a traitor like Jefferson Davis. Yeah, that was the one that got me right there. Anybody who doesn't fall into line with him is a traitor. And he said the name, Jefferson Davis. Are you going to be remembered as the people who tried to free the slaves like Abraham Lincoln? Or do you want to go down in history and be remembered like Jefferson Davis? No, he's not our friend, but when he does something right, I'll give him a pat on the fucking head. I'll still give somebody a cookie when they do the right thing. I'll roll up the newspaper and beat him on his little fucking turtle hook when he does the bad thing. And I'll give him the little dried shrimp that turtles seem to love so much when he does the good thing. During Biden's speech, he likened supporters of the voting rights bill to civil rights icons and foes to segregationists and Confederate leader Davis. At a consequential moment in our history, they present a choice, said Biden.
Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Jill, what's my line? Oh, do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis?
The sitting president of the United States compared American states to totalitarian states. He said our country will be an autocracy if he does not get his way. If he does not get his way. So the World Star Commander-in-Chief propagandized against his own country in a way that would have made Pravda blush. McConnell continued, referring to the old Soviet Union propaganda newspaper. Yeah, he's not wrong. Somebody go get a cookie for Mitch McConnell, because he did the right thing on this one. He still sucks, but if we keep rewarding him when he does something intelligent or smart, he might do it more often. I can't guarantee that, but he might. Randy says, I seem to remember Lincoln being on the right and Biden on the Senate floor trying to keep his kids' school from becoming a racial jungle. And that was in the same year, too. 1864. That was an old joke. Biden is old. From Fox News. Psaki brushes off McConnell, calls criticisms of Biden's speech hilarious. Please tell me I have video of this. I don't. I am almost tempted to open up the Daily Wire and see if they have this article. Because I know they will show Psaki if she's in the press briefing room. Oh! Breaking 10% producer prices, by the way. Damn! We'll be doing that tomorrow. We've got Waukesha stuff too, so let's make sure somebody reach out to Grant and make sure he's here tomorrow. But no, I don't have anything from Red-Haired Bobblehead on this over on Daily Wire, and they're usually good about getting video up too. All right, I guess I'll have to do my best circle back impression. All right. White House Press Secretary, Red-Haired Bobblehead, took aim at critics of President Biden's speech on voting rights, calling objections to his vitriolic tone hilarious. Look, I know there's been a lot of claim of the offensive nature of the speech yesterday, which is hilarious on many levels, given how many people sat silently over the last 4 years. For the former president, Psaki said during Wednesday's press briefing. That's all I have. That's all my script allows me to say on that. Let me circle back. Psaki added that it's more offensive is the effort to suppress people's basic right to exercise who they want to support and who they want to elect, arguing the election overhaul legislation should not be a partisan thing. And yet it was written under partisan rules, partisan lobbying, in ways that make it easier to get one party elected. And that's why he gave such a strong speech yesterday. Let me circle back. Psaki said, Bobblehead's remarks came after Biden's speech promoting election overhaul legislation was characterized by some as combative and aggressive, while Minority Leader Mitch McConnell called the president's remarks unpresidential. McConnell said Biden called millions of Americans his domestic enemies in the speech and shouted that if you disagree with him, you're George Wallace. George Wallace? McConnell questioned. If you don't pass the laws he wants, you're Bull Connor, and if you oppose giving Democrats untrammeled one-party control of the country, well, you're Jefferson Davis. Well, which is weird because Jefferson Davis was a Democrat who left the Union with several other states to go form a confederacy with untrammeled one-party control as a Democrat. I just thought that you guys would enjoy that. How profoundly unpresidential, McConnell continued. Look, I've known, liked, and personally respected Joe Biden for many years. I don't recognize the man at the podium yesterday. Check the earlobes, I'm telling you. But, as I said before, even Dick Durbin got in on this one. From the Hill, Durbin says Biden may have gone a little too far in Georgia's speech. From Carolyn Vakil. And he can't go any stronger than that because, if he does, then they'll start taking his committee assignments away from him. Senator Dick Durbin, the number 2 Senate Democrat, said Wednesday that President Brandon may have gone a little too far with his rhetoric during a speech in Georgia the previous day, advocating for voting rights legislation. During his speech, Biden called for the Senate to pass several pieces of legislation, including the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, while endorsing changes to the Senate filibuster in order to advance the bills. The president put pressure on lawmakers who have opposed making changes to the Senate rules, suggesting they had a choice to side either with advocates of voting rights or historical figures who backed segregation and the Confederacy.
Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? Biden said in Georgia.
It is stark, and I will concede that point, Durbin said during an interview with CNN's Jake Tapper on Wednesday, after the host noted the comparison made by Biden. Still, the Senate Majority Whip argued that there are parallels there in what Biden had referenced, arguing the Republicans have tried to make it harder for Americans to vote, and suggested a parallel with past historical attempts to keep Black Americans from voting. Perhaps the president went a little too far in the rhetoric, some of us do, but the fundamental principles and values at stake are very, very similar, Durbin said. Don't overlook the reality that in 20 different states governed and led by Republicans in legislature and government, each and every one of them, they're taking a step by wary step to make sure fewer Americans are going to vote, he added in the interview. I don't think he is. I don't think they are. I know that they want to make it so that only the citizens are voting, and they're only voting once, but honk honk, that never happens. But when Dick Durbin has said you've gone too far, it might be time to tone that shit down. The Donald got himself into the news. Now we're going to go talk about boosters and shit. Trump says politicians who don't confirm boosters are gutless, from Lexi and Lonis. I have no idea what's going on with this. All I know is that for several hours yesterday, Democrats were defending noted ethnonat, Ann Coulter. From Lexi Lonis. Former President Trump said politicians who weren't confirmed if they received a COVID booster shot are gutless. Trump noted during an interview with conservative Zero America News Network that he has received a booster and is dismayed that other politicians dodged the question when asked. The answer is yes, okay, but they don't want to say it because they're gutless. Whether you had to say it or not, say it. Trump said, the vaccine has saved tens of millions of people throughout the world. And by the way, they're doing great things. You know, my Operation Warp Speed, I did that. Nobody else did that, I did that. The former president did not mention any politicians by name, but when asked last month on Fox News if he received a booster, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said, I've done whatever I did. The normal shot. The Hill has requested comment on Trump's remarks from DeSantis' office. Trump first revealed he received the booster back in December while he was on a speaking tour with former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly. His remarks elicited boos from the crowd. The Donald has been publicly supportive of the vaccine, crediting his administration with the plans that led to the quick development of the life-saving shots. This was us. What did I say earlier? He's not going to come out and say, me, like Barack did. This was us, okay? But I mean, we did this. I signed the paper, but we did this, okay? So love me because we did this. And the distribution is moving along according to our plan, and it's moving along really well, Trump previously said. Trump has seen pushback over the vaccines from other prominent conservatives, however, such as Daily Wire's Candace Owens, who nobody cares about. Oh no, the vaccines work, but some people aren't the ones. The ones who get very sick, go to the hospital, are the ones who don't take the vaccine, but it's still their choice. And if you take the vaccine, you're protected, Trump told Owens on her podcast last month, which is false. But that's what we see coming off of that. But Ann Coulter got coming on this here. Ann Coulter blasts liar and con man Donald Trump over Ron DeSantis booster criticism. And before we read the article, let's actually read what it was that she had to say. Quote tweeted by Jersey Dad Compliant. I still don't trust Ann Coulter, but I approve of her Trump bashing tweet any day of the week. See if my quote tweet comes to the top. No, it didn't. I pointed out that this dude has no fucking principles whatsoever. None. Because he's out defending now noted ethnonat Ann Coulter. And I also asked how much this tweet cost the DNC. The quote tweet comes to exclusive. Trump is demanding to know Ron DeSantis' booster status, and I can now reveal it. He was a loyal booster when Trump ran in 2016. But then he learned our president was a liar and a con man whose grift was permanent. I hope that clears things up! Because Ann Coulter is pissed off because she told all her little ethnonat fucking simps. She wrote the book In Trump We Trust to tell all her little ethnonat simps. Oh no, don't worry, just vote for him because he's going to be this ethnonat. This is going to be a white ethno-state in this country. Just trust in Trump, okay? And go vote for him. In Trump we trust. He's going to get rid of all the black people. He's going to get all the Mexican people. He's going to build the wall. He's going to keep all of them out. Your families will be safe once again. That was Ann Coulter in 2016. And now she's pissed off over the fact that he didn't turn out to be an ethnonat. Even though people like Jersey Dad Compliant still believe that he is. Let's read from Newsweek. Ann Coulter blasts liar and con man Donald Trump over Ron DeSantis booster criticism. Ethno-nationalist Ann Coulter has launched an attack on the Donald, calling the former president a liar and a con man after he criticized politicians who refused to say whether they received the booster shot, an apparent swipe at Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The Donald made the comments during an interview on Zero America News, condemning gutless public figures who won't confirm or deny they've had the third dose of the vaccine. He said, I've had the booster. Many of politicians, and I watched a couple of politicians be interviewed, and one of the questions was, did you get the booster? Because they had the vaccine, and they're answering like, in other words, the answer is yes, but they don't want to say it because they're gutless. Although Trump did not mention DeSantis by names, the remarks are thought to be in part directed at the governor, who has swerved at questions about whether he has a booster shot in the recent weeks. Coulter, who was once a staunch supporter of the avatar of Trump that was a white ethno-nationalist, but turned on him for his failure to act on his promise to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, mocked him for booster remarks on his Twitter on Wednesday. And we read the tweet already. Coulter, who published the fawning book In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome in 2016, has leveled a number of insults at the former president in more recent years. During an interview on Andrew Sullivan's Dishcast podcast on November 5th, she called Trump an abjectly stupid and accused him of directly betraying his base for not building the wall despite this being his main campaign promise. Yeah, well, that's the thing. He did build the wall. Not only did he build the wall, or the majority of the wall, but he left the structure in place so well that the Biden admin had no choice but to finish building the wall, which they're coming back and doing. But yes, Coulter is just pissed off because he's not the ethno-net that she promised. From the Daily Wire, GOP lawmakers ask Biden why trillions of COVID stimulus somehow haven't paid for COVID testing kits. From Ben Ziesloft. Republican lawmakers are asking President Biden why COVID-19 tests are not yet widely available in the U.S. despite trillions in COVID-19 stimulus. Jason Smith, Kathy Morris Rogers, and Kevin Brady, who serve as Republican leaders for multiple key committees, observed in a letter to President Biden that Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra has said there are $10 billion in unspent funds for COVID-19 tests. Who made the decision not to exhaust these funds prior to the holiday season? They asked of the Commander-in-Chief, will the remaining funds be used for the federal response or will some be dispersed to the states? They asked the Brandon administration to explain its rejection of an October proposal that would have added more than 730 million at-home COVID tests to the market per month. Who was authorized to make that decision? Why were more proactive measures not taken to prepare for future variants, given the spread of the Delta over the summer? Additionally, the lawmakers noted that only 9% of Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan spending allocations actually went to public health spending to fight the virus, while the rest went to bailing out state governments or other social programs. They detailed the wasteful use of these funds, including New York's spending $2.1 billion for direct checks to illegal immigrants, Michigan giving $3,200 stimulus checks to prison inmates, and Chicago spending $31 million on a guaranteed income program. And you wonder why people don't want to spend money on the Build Back bullshit plan. Because none of that goes to climate change, just like the COVID stimulus. Very little of that went to actual stimulus or testing or anything else like that. Mostly it went to go bail out their big business buddies. Let's grab one from CNN. More 1-6 probe news, because that's all that they really have. McCarthy says he will not cooperate with the January 6th committee probe. From Zachary Cohen, Annie Grayer, and Ryan Nobles. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said he will not cooperate with a request from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Selfie Fest hours after the panel asked the California Republican to voluntarily provide information, including details about former President Donald Trump's state of mind during the Capitol attack and in the weeks later. As a representative and the leader of the minority party, it is with great regret, neither regret nor satisfaction, that I have concluded not to participate with the Select Committee's abuse of power that stains the institution today and will harm it going forward, McCarthy said in a statement on Wednesday night. The Republican leader charged the committee is not conducting a legitimate investigation, citing House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's rejection of some of its picks to serve on the panel and claimed that it is not serving any legislative purpose. The committee's request to McCarthy, detailed in a new letter released on Wednesday, marks a significant moment. The ongoing investigation, as the panel is now seeking cooperation from the top Republican in the House. We must also learn about how the president plans for January 6th to come together and all the other ways he attempted to alter the results of the election, wrote committee chairman Benny Thompson, a Democrat from Mississippi. For example, in advance of January 6th, you reportedly explained to Mark Meadows and the former president that objections to the certification of the electoral votes on January 6th was doomed to fail. The letter cited several previous comments made by McCarthy following the riot, including interviews where he discussed his conversations with Trump as the violence unfolded. Well, good on him. Really, honestly, good on him. It's time to come back and look at this and see this for what this is. This is nothing but a dig for stuff that they can use as we get down closer into midterm season and into the presidential season as well. They know they can't beat him. They know they can't do it again. They can't honk their way through the election. No matter how much they honk it this time. So now it's that they have to bar him from running. From the Daily Wire, Tom Cotton trolls Chuck Schumer in epic speech defending the filibuster by reading Schumer's own past remarks. from Daily Wire News. Tom Cotton trolled Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer in a speech on the Senate floor on Wednesday, where he read Schumer's previous defenses of the filibuster. Cotton's remarks come as the Democrats, including Joe Brandon and Vice President Kamala Harris, have attacked the filibuster in recent days as they struggle to pass their agenda through the U.S. Senate. Cotton reads the following quotes. Let's actually just listen to this. I think that'll be better for everybody.
The senator from Arkansas.
Right now, we are on the precipice of a constitutional crisis. We're about to step into the abyss. I want to talk for a few minutes why we're on that precipice and why we're looking into that abyss. Let me first ask a fundamental question. What is the crisis that calls for the undoing of 2 centuries of tradition? Are senators merely doing their jobs as legislators, responding to a generalized public calling for the abolition of the filibuster? Clearly not. It is not the American people at large who are demanding detonation of the nuclear option. The nuclear option is being pushed largely by the radioactive rhetoric of a small band of radicals who hold in their hands the political fortunes of the president. Constitutional scholars will tell us that the reason we have these rules in the Senate, unlimited debate, 2/3 to change the rules, the idea that 60 have to close off debate, is embodied in the spirit and rule of the Constitution. That is what the Constitution is all about, and we all know it. It is the Senate where the Founding Fathers established a repository of checks and balances. It's not like the House of Representatives, where the majority leader or the speaker can snap his fingers and get what he wants. On important issues, the Founding Fathers wanted, and they were correct in my judgment, that the slimmest majority should not always govern. The Senate is not a majoritarian body. The bottom line is very simple. The ideologues in the Senate want to turn the Founding Fathers, what the Founding Fathers called the cooling saucer of democracy, into a rubber stamp of dictatorship. They want to make this country into a banana republic, where if you don't get your way, you change the rules. Are we going to let them? It will be a doomsday for democracy if we do. I, for one, hope and pray that it will not come to this. But I assure my colleagues, at least speaking for this senator, I will do everything I can to prevent the nuclear option from being invoked, not for the sake of myself or my party, but for the sake of this great republic and its traditions. Those are powerful words, but they're not mine. Every word of my speech today was originally spoken by our esteemed colleague, the senior senator from New York, Chuck Schumer. Senator Schumer spoke so eloquently in defense of the Senate's rules, customs, and traditions when the fortunes of his party looked a little different. My, how times have changed. Now it's Senator.
So, and I mean, that's been things that have been being said since they started talking about eliminate the filibuster. Since they realized that they couldn't just come off and get their way no matter what. Since they realized that Manchin wasn't going to let them come back out and get rid of the filibuster. Because the thing was, when Georgia fell, and I'm going to come out and say that it fell, when Georgia fell to the Democrats in 2020, when Georgia fell like that, They thought that they were going to go right in there. They were going to get confirmed. President Biden was going to get installed. Put his hand on the Bible and say, up, up. Oh, Bible's over here. I still have it sitting there from Christmas. I promise. Yeah, to uphold the thing, man. And, you know. So help me, the big guy. As long as I may live. Come on, man. He was going to put his hand on the Bible and say that. And then the next thing after that, they were going to come in there and they, hey, we have 50 votes and we're going to Kamala Harris in there and the filibuster's going to be gone and we're just going to fast track every piece of our agenda in here. But as it's been pointed out right from the beginning, Schumer was a great user of the filibuster. Biden was one of the top users of this supposedly racist, horrifying artifact of Jim Crow. Barack Obama, Kamala Harris loved to use these things when they were in the minority. But now that they've eked out the slimmest of majorities, now they're going to come out and say that this is evil. And anybody who wants to use it is racist. And bad. And it's the same as Strom Thurmond and Jefferson Davis. And good on Cotton for that. Once again, it comes to a point where it is the people you don't necessarily agree with. Because Tom Cotton I don't care for. But when he does the right thing, pat him on the fucking head, give him a cookie. Because he did the right thing. And he doesn't do that very often. From the Blaze. Liberal media definitely silent on report indicating Biden admin was behind letter describing parents as domestic terrorists. This is interesting because they're right. The liberal media is silent. There is no mention of this anywhere. This is from Phil Shiver. The left-leaning American news media has so far refused to cover a bombshell report indicating that the Brandon administration may have been instrumental in drafting the letter that compared protesting parents to domestic terrorists and requested the Patriot Act be used against them. It was literally Merrick Garland. I don't know why this is a bombshell report. We know who did this. A newly obtained email exchange appeared to show that the highly controversial September 29th National School Boards Association letter that came directly resulted in the FBI using counterterrorism tactics against parents was drafted and sent to President Biden at the direction of the Department of Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. The email communication obtained by activist groups Parents Defending Education through a Freedom of Information Act request raised serious concerns that the administration had predetermined to go to war against parents protesting school lockdowns and critical race theory in classrooms, merely formulating the letter as cover. Alright. I know Ron doesn't want to listen to President Biden. He doesn't. But at this point, this warrants this here, because between the actual premeditated use of all of this, the premeditated use of the Justice Department to go to war against parents, and what we heard from this speech. Is it here?
16 of them voted to extend it. And it won't find a way to pass these voting rights bills. Debate them. Vote. Let the majority prevail. And if that bare minimum is blocked, we have no option but to change the Senate rules, including getting rid of the filibuster for this. You know, last year, if I'm not mistaken, the filibuster was used 154 times. In the United States Senate, it takes a supermajority on voting rights. When it comes to protecting majority rule in America, the majority should rule in the United States Senate. I make this announcement with careful deliberation, recognizing the fundamental right to vote is a right from which all other rights flow. And I make it with an appeal to my Republican colleagues. to those Republicans who believe in the rule of law, restore the bipartisan tradition of voting rights. People who restored it, who abided by in the past were Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush. They all supported the Voting Rights Act. Don't let the Republican Party morph into something else. Restore the institution of the Senate the way it was designed to be. Senate rules were just changed to raise the debt ceiling so we wouldn't renege on our debt for the first time in our history. Up in the Congress and the White House, the event coming up shortly to celebrate Dr. King's birthday. And Americans of all stripes will praise him for the content of his character. But as Dr. King's family said before, it's not enough to praise their father. They even said, on this holiday, don't celebrate his birthday unless you're willing to support what he lived for and what he died for. The next few days, when these bills come to a vote, will mark a turning point in this nation's history. We will choose. The issue is, will we choose democracy over autocracy, light over shadows, justice over injustice? I know where I stand. I will not yield. I will not flinch. I will defend the right to vote, our democracy against all enemies, foreign and, yes, domestic. The question is, where will the institution of the United States Senate stand? Every senator, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, will have to declare where they stand, not just for the moment, but for the ages. Will you stand against voter suppression? Yes or no? That's the question they'll answer. Will you stand against election subversion? Yes or no? Will you stand for democracy? Yes or no? And here's one thing every senator, every American should remember. History has never been kind to those who've sided with voter suppression over voters' rights. And it'll even be less kind for those who side with election subversion. So I ask every elected official in America, how do you want to be remembered? At consequential moments in history, they present a choice. Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? This is the moment to decide, to defend our elections, to defend our democracy.
So, between that rambling, simplistic speech and what we see off of that, these are, this is the Biden administration going to war, literally, against people that don't agree with him. Do you want to be remembered as people who agree with me, who give me what I want, or people who will stand against critical race theory, and I can use the Department of Justice to go to war against you? And that's what we see off that. Matt Gaetz is in the news. I thought we were done with this bullshit. There's another one. They can't beat him, so they're going to bar him from running. From NBC News, Matt Gaetz' ex-girlfriend testifies to grand jury in sex trafficking probe. From Mark Caputo. Representative Matt Gaetz' ex-girlfriend testified Wednesday before a federal grand jury investigating him for sex crimes, a major development that suggests the DOJ may be moving closer to indicting him. The ex-girlfriend, whose name is being withheld by NBC News to respect her privacy, and because they probably will get their shit shoved in once they realize that she's not who she says she is, has been in talks for months with persecutors about an immunity deal. Under a possible deal, she would avoid persecution for obstruction of justice in return for testifying in the investigation into whether Gaetz in 2017 had sex with a 17-year-old female for money and whether months later he and others violated a federal law prohibiting people from paying for prostitutes overseas. Legal sources familiar with the case say Gates is being investigated for 3 distinct crimes: sex trafficking the 17-year-old, violating the Mann Act, which prohibits taking women across state lines for prostitution, and obstructing justice. Gates has not been charged with a crime and has denied all accusations, saying he never paid for sex and never had sex with a minor when he was an adult. The firebrand conservative has called the federal investigation into him a DOJ witch hunt. The attorney for Gates' ex-girlfriend, Tim Jansen, declined to comment about the case on Wednesday when he was spotted by an NBC News reporter during the federal courthouse in Orlando with his client. The Department of Justice spokesperson declined to comment. Gates did not respond to a request for comment. This whole thing just sounds completely fucking made up. Whoa, we have this star witness here, and we know that we can place her as being a girlfriend of Matt Gaetz, which most people around. If this really is, by the way, somebody in Florida is going to leak her name. And then that person is going to come forward and say, yes, I testified in front of the House, or no, that I didn't. This whole thing screams of made up. This whole thing screeches of something that's made up. But they're going to keep trying to do this because, once again, they can't beat him, so they're going to bar him from running. Here's an op-ed from the Washington Post where democracy goes to die in darkness. I wanted to bring to you guys, see what you guys thought about it. This is from Charles Lane. Opinion on vaccine mandates. The Supreme Court is doing a job Congress should have finished long ago. As is often true of Supreme Court cases, what's remarkable about the challenges to President Brandon's vaccine mandates is that they're happening at all. At issue is whether the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 empowers the executive branch to impose a vaccine or test mandate on businesses which collectively employ more than 80 million people, and in a second lawsuit whether Medicare or Medicaid status authorizes a similar mandate for more than 10 million healthcare workers. In both cases, the Brandon administration is asking the court to construe in its favor statutes that imply, but do not expressly confer, vaccine mandate authority. Based on what they have said in oral arguments on Friday, most justices might agree with the administration on the second question, but not the first. Whether the court rules, Congress should have cleared this matter long ago by providing expressly for vaccine mandates, whether either within these statutes or more generally. No, that's unconstitutional. And by the way, if they'd have done this years ago, the Supreme Court would have come back down and said, no, fuck you, back then, because some religious anti-vaxxer who thought that the mercury gave her little kids autism 40 years ago, would have already sued for this shit. Even those who don't support a mandate to deal with the coronavirus should acknowledge that some epidemics could necessitate one, and that the federal government ought to be able to impose it without resorting to a legal workaround, as Biden is arguably doing now. No. I don't like the fact that the states have the ability to do it. I think that's blatantly unconstitutional. But it comes out of the 10th Amendment, so it's there, and I can argue with it, and I can go to Madison and say, Tony Evers, you're an asshole. Stop doing shit. There would be foreseeable constitutional objections. States can mandate vaccines pursuant to their oddly named but broad, long-established police power over an individual citizens. The Supreme Court recognized that in 1905's Jacobson v. Massachusetts case, citing the primacy of public health concerns and the common good. Congress has no police power. Yeah, they do. It's called the FBI. The relative handful of federal individual mandates are linked to express powers in the Constitution. A military draft derives from Congress's power to raise armies. Federal jury duty effectuates the Sixth Amendment's right to a jury trial. Since the New Deal, however, the Supreme Court has upheld broad congressional regulation of businesses and individuals under its authority over interstate commerce, which their behavior affects. Much of modern government rests on this doctrine. No! And you cited the reason for this too, by the way, Jacobson versus Massachusetts. If you want to mandate go down to your state house, which I don't know what state you're in, but go down to your state house and go get on your knees and possibly suck off your governor and say, please put the boot on me a little bit harder. Please take away more of my freedoms, please. But leave the federal government out of it. But that's what we see off of that. From the Star Tribune. Minneapolis and St. Paul to require vaccine proof to get into bars and restaurants. From Katie Galiotto, Liz Navratil, and Faiza Mahmoud. Minneapolis and St. Paul will require customers to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test to enter restaurants, bars, and other entertainment venues, marking some of the most aggressive steps the Twin Cities have taken to curb the spread of the virus. And you know that once those things are in place, they never go away because of the government programs. The action comes as officials are trying to temper a spike in infections with hospitalizations, fueled by the fast-spreading Ermagerd variant, which is causing staffing shortages across industries. This is a critical next step to avoid closures, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry said at a virtual news conference alongside Mayor Melvin Carter and other officials. We want to stay open and we need to stay safer. The new restrictions, which will apply to places where food or beverages are sold for on-site indoor consumption, will go into effect for most businesses January 19th. Though ticketed events will not be required to comply until January 26th, patrons can either provide proof of vaccination or proof of a negative COVID test taken under medical supervision within the last 72 hours. Proof of boosters is not required. Because they don't care about actually whether or not you're vaccinated, or fully vaccinated, as so they say. What they care about is control. They care about getting in there and getting to show more of your fucking papers. Chicago has fallen. Chicago's done the same thing. I would not be surprised to turn around and find out that Madison is in the process of getting set to start doing one of these things. Milwaukee, I don't think they can get away with. Especially if you get up north past Lincoln. If you get past Lincoln Avenue in Milwaukee, I don't think they can pull this off over there because of the Tuskegee experiments. And there are not a lot of people over there that are all excited to go and get the jab. But Madison, I bet you they could. But yes, coming to a major liberal urban center near you is more of this. From the Blaze, California County bans large gatherings and asks residents to shelter in place to stop the spread of the Ermagerd. Ermagerd! From Carlos Garcia. A county in California is banning large gatherings for 30 days in order to stop the spread of the Ermagerd variant. Sonoma County, in coastal region north of San Francisco, issued the ban on indoor events with more than 50 people and on outdoor events with more than 100 people. County health officials asked residents to voluntarily shelter in place and avoid contacting people outside their household for 30 days. The new restrictions will begin on Wednesday and remain until February 11th. Our case rates at their highest level since the pandemic began, and our hospitalizations are climbing at an alarming rate as well, said Sonoma County Health Officer Sundari Masi. We are seeing widespread transmission occurring within unvaccinated groups as well as some transmission among vaccinated individuals. Officials say the data indicated about half the coronavirus cases in the county came from large gatherings. So, and I'm curious about the hospitalizations too, because, well, that's the thing. And I know there are people that have had it worse than me, but like I say, I haven't taken anything for this at all. I was told to go get some zinc and vitamin D3 and vitamin C. I haven't done any of that. I got a thing of Quick Trip orange juice, and I drank that. That was my vitamin C. I think I have some zinc here, actually, too. I think. I gotta think about that for a second. No, I don't think I do anymore. I think I'm out of that. But regardless. And D3 is just going out in the sun, except for the fact it's cold as shit out here right now. But regardless, looking in at all that, I do have milk. Yes, there's probably some people that are getting hospitalized off of this, but are they getting hospitalized? Styx brought this up because, they had to shut down the emergency wing in his hometown because it was just constantly overcrowded. Because all the people do is they reach out, they look up, they say, oh my god, I tested positive, what'd I do? And go straight to the hospital. And that's a hospitalization. I didn't even test. I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal. 9 people around me got the Ermagerd variant within the last week, and now I have a cough and a high fever. The Bureau runs on statistics, Memphis Reigns. County health officials, we got all that. But yeah, the thing of it is it might be time to just get everybody out, shelter the very, very vulnerable in place, get the very vulnerable people out of there, and get everybody out there and get everybody else good and fucking sick, so they can be done with this. From Fox Business. Bill Gates says the pinko-pox vaccines are missing 2 key things. From Paul Best. Bill Gates, who donated $1.75 billion to COVID vaccine development and fighting the pandemic, said this week that while the currently available vaccines prevent severe illnesses and death, they aren't durable enough and should be better at preventing infection. The Microsoft founder, whose net worth Forbes pegs at $135.9 billion, made the comments in a Twitter discussion with Devi Sridhar, the chair of global public health at the University of Edinburgh Medical School. The vaccines we have prevent severe disease and death very well, but they are missing 2 key things, Gates said, to a question about what would make the biggest difference in ending the pandemic. First, they still allow infections break through, and the duration appears to be limited. We need vaccines that prevent reinfection and have many years of duration. A recent University of Copenhagen study found that the rapid spread of Omicron variant, which is now responsible for 98.3% of new cases in the US according to the CDC, is likely due to its availability to better evade the immunity offered by the vaccine and prior infection than previous variants. Gates noted the Ermagerd will challenge the health system as it becomes the dominant strain in other countries around the world, but might allow health officials to start treating the pinko-pox the same way they track endemic viruses like influenza. Once Ermagerd goes through a country, then the rest of the year should see far fewer cases, so COVID can be treated more like seasonal flu, Gates said on Tuesday. It kind of sounds like Gates is saying the same thing that I just said. Get everybody out there good and fucking sick. And then send them on their way. Shelter all the very vulnerable people away. And get everyone else good and sick. Let them go, oh, my back hurts for a week, and put them back to work. But speaking of that as well, from the New York Post, Spain's Prime Minister calls for treating COVID as an endemic illness. From Lee Brown. Spanish leader Pedro Sanchez has insisted it's time to start treating COVID-19 cases as an endemic illness like the flu. It's a necessary debate. Science has given us the answer to protect ourselves, the 49-year-old Prime Minister told radio station Cadena Ser on Monday, according to Bloomberg. Sanchez cited the plunging death rate amid surging infections as proof that the threat is not what we faced a year ago. He argued that it's time to stop recording every infection and testing everyone with symptoms and instead start monitoring it more like a less deadly flu-like endemic illness. We have to evaluate the evolution of COVID from a pandemic to an endemic illness, he said. Health Minister Carolina Darius has discussed the proposal with some of her counterparts in the European Union, Sanchez said without elaborating. However, the WHO Senior Emergency Officer in Europe, Catherine Smallwood, cautioned the time for such a shift is still way off. We have way too much control right now. We can't shift this just yet. We still have a huge amount of uncertainty and a virus that's evolving quite quickly and posing new challenges. We're certainly not at the point where we're able to call it endemic, Smallwood said. Really? Why? Because you've been given too much control? Because you control the content that's on YouTube right now? Is that why you can't do this yet? No, it's time. It's time. It's not a pandemic anymore. It's here to stay. You get a new variant every year. Let it go. Give up your power before your people make you give up your power in a way that you're not going to like. All right, and the last one, well, thing I like and thing I hate are all news too. But last one that we will do before we head out and do thing I like and thing I hate. DHS unveils efforts to recruit climate change professionals. From Monique Beals. The Department of Homeland Security announced on Wednesday that it would create a new program to recruit experts focused on climate change. The Climate Change Professionals Program seeks to attract recent graduates and current federal employees to work with DHS on climate-related goals, according to a press release from the department. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the program would be instrumental in helping the department adapt to our changing climate by providing hands-on experience and guidance to young professionals interested in climate adaptation and resilience. This program will develop the next generation of climate experts, improve climate literacy through the department, and help us execute our climate action plan to remain mission resilient while reducing our own impact on the environment, he added. The program is intended to last 2 years and provide opportunities that contribute to the programs that have potential to substantially help DHS adapt to climate change and improve resilience. As the DHS grapples with various security issues, environmental concerns are expected to play a significant role in the future, especially in terms of climate-related mitigation. Last year, a World Bank report warned that climate change could displace 216 million people by 2050 if issues such as rising sea levels, water shortages, and decreased crop productivity go unaddressed. They're looking for their Fauci for climate change is what they're doing. So they're trying to pull everybody back in there so they can find their experts and say, these are the ones, these are the bishops of our religion of climate change. Worship them. Kiss the ring. All right. And with that, it's going to be it for the news today, except for all 3 of the thing I like, thing I hate articles I have here are all news as well. But now we're going to do a thing that I like and a couple things that I hate. From the USA Today, thing I like today. 3 children fell into a frozen pond in Colorado. A woman went out and saved all of them. And that's what we need more of. You know, I get a little bit scared to say it, and it's hyperbolic to say it. But I do fear that in my generation, millennial generation, we're going to see something like this happen. And first, all the people around are going to have their cell phone out and 17 people watching the kids fall into the lake. And then everybody else is going to call and say, government, do something! Government, do something! Because that's all that they seem to do. But to take the initiative to run out there and actually try to help and fix something. Good on this woman. From Jordan Mendoza. A Colorado woman is being praised as a hero after saving 3 children who had fallen into a frozen pond. Dusty Talavera, 23, was inside her apartment in Denver on Sunday afternoon watching children ages 4, 6, and 11 play outside in a frozen pond. Seconds later, she looked again and saw the children fall in. Next thing she knew, she was out on the pond. Instinct was to go outside, Talavera said at a Monday news conference. Before I even realized it, I was out there in the middle of the pond. Talavera was able to pull the 2 of the children, an 11-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl, out of the pond, but as she attempted to grab the third, a 6-year-old girl, the ice Talavera was on gave way. She found herself also in the 15-foot deep pond. Talavera was unable to get herself out, so she tried to keep the head of the girl, who was unconscious, above water. Luckily, the young girl's teenage cousin came out and threw Talavera a rope. Talavera said that she was able to get pulled out of the water and then pulled the last child out of the frozen pond. The next few moments were chaotic, Talavera said, as the young girl was still unconscious and people attempted to get help. Soon after, deputies from the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office arrived on the scene. Deputies were worried about the girl suffering from hypothermia, so they took off her winter coat and began performing CPR. Just as the South Metro Fire Rescue Team arrived, the girl began to breathe and she was taken to the hospital. So, one of these situations that could have turned out way worse. Way, way worse. And I'm glad that this Talavera was there. I'm glad that she was there and that instinct kicked in and she was able to go out there. She risked her own life and fell into the ice herself to go and save these people. And I'm happy to see it. I'm ecstatic to see something like this. This is great to see. We need to see more of this in our society. We really do. And less of this of how you're supposed to wear your mask. Now let's do a couple things that I hate. This one comes to us from the New York Post. Rhodes Scholar claims she grew up poor and abused, then her story started to unravel. From Jerry Oppenheimer, Isabel Vincent. Yeah, this just makes me angry because there are people who are very intelligent who maybe need a little bit of a leg up to go off and realize their full potential. Who actually grew up poor. But then this person who has every advantage given to her comes back out and tries to pretend that she's grew up in the same kind of lifestyle I did, essentially. She's appropriating my culture. And she almost got away with it. In November 2020, when University of Pennsylvania graduate student Mackenzie Fierstein won the prestigious and highly competitive Rhodes Scholarship study at Oxford, one of just 32 scholars selected from a pool of 2,300 applicants, she was praised by the Ivy League school's president in a newsletter. Mackenzie is so deserving of this prestigious opportunity, declared President Amy Gutman of the 23-year-old from suburban St. Louis. As a first generation to go to college, low-income student, and former foster youth, Mackenzie's passionate about championing young people and dedicating herself to a life of public service. But a few months later, Fierstein had lost her prestigious scholarship and was fighting against accusations that she had been blatantly dishonest about her childhood in Penn and Rhodes applications. Now the investigation into her story is being revealed by the Chronicle of Higher Education, including the Rhodes Committee's findings that Fierstein created and repeatedly shared false narratives about herself using these misrepresentations to serve her interests as an applicant for the competitive program. The case also exposes the murky underbelly of elite schools like Penn and their quest to show that they're transforming society rather than laundering its inequalities by accepting remarkable applicants with truly tragic backgrounds, according to the Chronicle report. Multiple college consultants told the Post that the college application process now features more questions about overcoming obstacles. The 2021-2022 essay prompts from Common App, the organization that oversees undergrad applications for more than 900 schools, include recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. So are they going to say what it was that actually happened off this, or do I have to go back to the fucking Daily Wire and get this? Ah, yes. Buried all the way down in the bottom, because they don't want you to know exactly how white this girl was. According to the Chronicle, Fierstein lived with her mother, Carrie Morrison, a divorcee and director of breast imaging and mammography at a local hospital, on a suburban tree-lined cul-de-sac with large houses and well-groomed lawns. I believe the Daily Wire, when they did this, and I didn't use the Daily Wire because I prefer to use Screen Check when possible, when available, mentioned that it was a $750,000 house that she lived in with a single mother. Not a two-family $750,000 house, a one-parent income $750,000 house. And then she also went to Whitfield, a $30,000 a year private school in St. Louis, although the Chronicle does not note how her tuition was paid for or if she received financial aid. And Isn't that kind of like the line in 8 Mile when Eminem was making fun of the dude after they found out and he went to Cranbrook? That's a private school. And yeah, there is corruption on both ends of this because, yeah, the colleges want to come out and say, yes, we didn't take the white private school child. We took the person from the inner city, even though she is white, from the inner city and raised her up to be better for the world and change the income inequality throughout the world and raise the poor and not cater to the rich, even though we've spent our entire lives catering to the rich. Everybody loves a sob story. Yeah, Clarence went to Cranbrook. That's a private school. And Clarence's parents have a really nice marriage. Now it's coming back to me. So, yeah. I mean, if you're going to be given every advantage, at least fess up to it. You can still change the world. If you've got the intelligence to get the Rhodes Scholarship, you can still go out and change the world. But don't lie about it. Alright, and the other thing that I hate, House of Horrors from the Blaze. Police arrest woman after finding injured and heavily soiled toddlers hog-tied and trapped inside home. To the wood chipper with that one. Authorities arrested a San Antonio woman after discovering 2 dirty, injured toddlers trapped alone in a room in her house. According to a report from KTZed TV, police arrested 37-year-old Priscilla Ann Salias on Tuesday and charged her with 2 counts of endangering a child after receiving a tip that there were 2 filthy, injured children being held in a room in her house. Why? Why do people do this? I don't understand. Like, I look at my nieces and nephews and say, I want to dedicate a part of my life to make sure nothing bad ever happens to you kids. And yet we have actual parents that are willing to do this to their children or lock their children in a trunk. What is wrong with our society? What has happened to our society that this is acceptable? That somebody can have this idea in their head and say, yes, I believe this is a good idea. I'm going to do this. On Sunday, officials forced their way into a room in her home and reportedly discovered the children, a 2-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl, inside the room. The female toddler, according to the arrest affidavit, had her wrists and ankles bound and tied together. The unnamed child had a visible injury, including a blackened eye and a bloodied lip. To the chipper. The male was trapped inside a playpen that was covered with a changing table and a baby carrier. Both children were heavily soiled and crying when the first responders burst into the room. I'm so glad that these kids have the opportunity to get out of this house and they didn't find these kids in much worse condition or dead. Salias reported that she had temporary custody of the children who belonged to her stepdaughter, as the children's biological parents were under investigation by Child Protective Services. Her bail was set at $150,000. Good. Fucking good. She's not posted bail at the time of this reporting and has denied all charges. Good. $150,000, fucking good. Seriously. Seriously. Not like the lady, I think, wasn't that also in Texas? The English teacher? Who only had, what, $1,500 as bail? For locking her kid in the trunk and driving down the fucking road? Good. You're not going to get away with bail reform for very much longer either. But that's what we see off of that. And I do find it interesting that the step-grandmother, I should say, has custody, as the biological parents were under investigation by CPS. And now CPS has had to get involved with this as well. It's going to be time to get these kids far, far away from all of these people. It's done. Let's go. Alright, that's it. That's all I have. Let's head out of here for the day. I know I can't keep doing these late shows forever either. At some point, I'm going to have to go back to work. This sucks. I'm climbing the fucking walls. Where's my outro music? There it is. Alright, so we're going to head out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat, the lurkers and the listeners, everybody else who was here throughout the day, commenting, keeping the robots out of the chat, and coming and enjoying the news with me. We'll be back here tomorrow with more contemporary and live chat. I've got all the names here of everybody who chatted in the live chat, so we'll get the special thank you out there. So come back and join us for that, and come back and hang out with us and listen to the news of the weekend. We'll see if Biden steps on his own toes anymore or says something stupid about voting rights or anything else. I'm sure it's going to be a fun time, and we'll see what happens with that. So we will see you then for more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.